Good morning, parents, and thank you so much for joining us for our second grade curriculum webinar. You guys have the distinct honor, I think, of being our last grade level curriculum webinar for this semester, so welcome. Before we actually jump into the content of the webinar, I do want to do a few reminders for you. One, this is being recorded, so if you'd like to go back and watch it again, you can. For those who are not able to join us, they will be able to watch this at a later date once Mr. Nema gets it uploaded to YouTube and we're able to push those links out. Secondly, just want to let you know that we will take questions as a part of the webinar, but it will be at the end once the teachers have gone through the content as well. And the way that you can submit a question is by clicking on the chat box on your device, type in your questions, and if you'd make sure that you ensure that your questions are being sent to everyone, that makes it so that I can read it and Mr. Nema can read it as well. We've had a few webinars where some parents have submitted to private and then we're not aware that a question has been submitted. Now, in the room with us today are, of course, me, Dr. Mag. We have Mr. Nema, who's managing the technology for us. Also, Mr. Nema is available in the webinar to answer any questions about technology in the technology program here at St. Martin's. Also in the room is Ms. Green, Mrs. Lazowski, and Mrs. Veal. And let's see, Mr. Nema, anything else you feel like we need to talk about before we get in?
No, not at this time.
Okay, well, enjoy the webinar and I'll jump in wherever I need to. I'm going to turn it over to the teachers.
Hi everyone, this is Miss Green. I hope everyone's enjoying their morning. It's not rainy, thank goodness. I'm going to talk a little bit about language arts and what's going on this semester and kind of how our expectations are shifting or what's remaining the same. The thing that's consistent with last semester is our weekly journeys tests. When we do a journey story each week, when we're not doing a novel study, we'll still have our comprehension tests and our vocab tests, both having 10 comprehension questions and 10 vocabulary questions on that particular story. So those tests will remain the same as last semester. The students will be reading the questions on their own, just like we did last semester, and those remain consistent. The only thing that changes is when we do a novel study, which we're obviously in the process of doing this month. We're reading The Wizard of Oz. Last semester, we did our first novel study with Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. And instead of doing weekly tests, we'll do activities that test student understanding, comprehension, and also other activities that supplement, the grammar units that go along with the journey stories. We're really looking forward to reading also The One and Only Ivan later in this semester, and then that will be followed up by a field trip to the zoo. And moving on from novel studies, we're going to keep talking about benchmark tests. The benchmark tests are also remaining consistent. It's every 6 weeks, no matter if we supplement novel studies for a journeys week. Every 6 weeks, students will be tested on the content that was covered during that 6-week period or prior to that 6-week period, so they're cumulative. What we're really looking for is, does your child have the stamina to take the test and complete it, but also use the test-taking skills that he or she is learning throughout the year? So like checking their work, highlighting important information from the passage, reading the questions before they read the text, things like that. This will help greatly with the ERBs next year. So this is all just coupling with, yes, we want to test them for understanding on content, but are we preparing them for the big standardized tests that they will be getting next year? So benchmark tests remain the same format. Students will read them themselves, and they're 20 questions each. So for reading, it'll be over the content covered, and then for phonics, it'll be the structure of a spelling test, but just cumulative. Another thing that we wanted to highlight are the resources that you have as parents at home and that your child has access to. You have access to tons of resources that will benefit your child. Previous homework pages, things that we send home on Fridays are really helpful to keep. We'll always send you home a benchmark review packet, whether that's physically or it's on our website. If your child maybe struggles with comprehension and understanding of a weekly story, you're of course more than welcome to have your child bring their journeys book home as long as it's returned the next day. You can also access the stories on your Think Central accounts, which you all have passwords for. And if you need that again, please don't hesitate to reach out. Also on YouTube, there's a ton of read alouds of the journey stories that you are more than welcome to access each week. It doesn't hurt to always hear the story more than once. Still me. I'm talking about writing expectations and goals again. Things either are consistent or shifting. This is kind of where you're going to see your child. Things are going to be shifting. We expect at this point that your child understands when to use proper capitalization and punctuation. So we expect that your child is using a capital letter to start each sentence for proper nouns and the word I. Punctuation, we expect your child to know when to use a period, a question mark, or an exclamation mark. They've been exposed to commas, so really we're trying to figure out, does your child use this and is it consistent? Do they have proper grammar mechanics? And this is where we're kind of, being a little bit more of a stickler this semester, just because this is more of an expectation. So you might see your child have a speeding ticket or having to redo something, but it's just because we're looking to see and really strengthen to see that this is a mastered skill. Spelling and sight words and grammar on homework, classwork, and other projects that we do within the class. We expect your child to spell words that they've been taught correctly. So rules that have been covered up until this point, we expect your child to correctly use the rule in their writing. If they don't, then they'll have to rewrite that word. Same thing with sight words that have been covered and grammar that's been taught. We're expecting them to use, proper nouns correctly, nouns, verbs, and adjectives. And then I think the biggest thing is at the bottom. We're talking about rereading and editing. I think instilling your child with the understanding of, before I turn this in, is this something I'm proud of and does this make sense? Rereading, making sure that they check over and self-correct before turning it in, making sure they have their capital letters, punctuation. Does this sentence make sense? Do I have a subject? Do I have an action? And we would love for your help with reinforcing this at home whenever they're doing free writing or when they're working on their homework. Still me. I'm going to be moving on to talk about book reports. Last semester we did one book report, and this semester we're going to be doing two. They're super exciting because the kids really love them. We're combining two book reports that we did last year into one, so we're really excited about that, and that one is the second one that you see on the screen. It's going to be the biography poster plus a windows and mirrors book report, and I'll go into more details about that. That will be due February 26th, so you should be expecting an email or from our websites and a physical copy of the rubric being sent home at the beginning of February. But what this is your child will pick a windows or mirrors book. Windows being a look into someone that's not very similar to their life, and a mirrors book being having similarities with your child. So there's a ton of different options. We'll, of course, provide you with a list of these books. And then they'll be creating a biography poster where they'll have a cutout of their head and be able to present as if they were that person who they're reading about. It's a really exciting and fun book report that in the past most students have loved to do. The last book report, which you'll obviously get more information in the coming months, will be due April 29th. And that's also a really fun book report. Students seem to really enjoy it. It's the cereal box book report on a fiction story. And what your child will do will be to decorate a cereal box with a summary and a cool game and an interactive piece. And inside they'll put little trinkets that somehow dictate a part of the story. More information to come, but that will be sent home. The rubric and the email about that will be sent home at the beginning of April. So rest assured there are no book reports in your spring break. And then the other thing I wanted just to remind y'all of with book reports is this is your child's work. We would love to see your child put some effort in because you have about a month to do most of these. And I would love, and I know all the teachers would love to see that your child has rehearsed their presentation of the book report before coming into school. That's super important just with public speaking, and it shows us that they spend a lot of time on it.
Hi everyone, this is Mrs. Veal. I'm going to take over, let Sumner have a break. I'm going to be talking about phonics, and we'll also go into social studies, but starting with our phonics, it's really going to take the same format that you've seen up until now. There will be more on our weekly spelling test, previous spelling concepts, just because we've accumulated a lot at this point. So it will still be 10 words on the front with our sight words in there as well, and we'll still have 2 dictation sentences and visual memory. We definitely recommend that you guys hang on to those and kind of compile them so you can look back and look and see different sight words that we've used, different phonics rules that have popped up recently. But we will be repeating phonics concepts especially in the dictation sentences, because we want to see that your students are retaining the rules that we are teaching and also able to apply them, not just on a spelling test, which could be memorization, but they can actually put it in a written sentence. And again, Sumner already talked about this a little bit, but our phonics benchmark tests are going to take the same format, and same as our weekly spelling test, you are going to have a lot of our previous concepts, but the benchmark phonics test will really look at the phonics rules that we've covered within that 5-week period. And again, all of us have posted a lot of the resources online, but please feel free to reach out. We have so many resources and each child is different. We do a lot of different techniques at school and know which ones your children like especially. So if you are struggling to have your child practice at home, please feel free to email us and we can give you some ideas on how best to practice all of our phonics. And social studies, again, we're doing our social studies units in tandem with our benchmark weeks. So the social studies lessons are going to replace when we would regularly be doing language arts and spelling lessons during those weeks. It is Georgia concepts and historical figures. We're continuing to move through that. Each one of our classes is kind of taking it at a different pace. So all of us are going to be covering all of the same content. It's all very Georgia-centric this year. And just a reminder that social studies is graded starting in 3rd grade. So just like in our benchmarks and language arts, we're really building their skills on being able to comprehend all of the social studies information and kind of apply that knowledge to look at how their life in Georgia is right now and how it can relate and compare to Georgia history.
Hi, this is Mrs. Lasowski, and I am filling in for Mrs. Thomason as she is home with her sweet little baby girl. But want to talk about our math curriculum. Our GoMath curriculum is not really changing in terms of how we're teaching. We're still using our GoMath books, and as you've noticed coming home for homework, you will see QR codes on our homework pages. If your child or you would like to review what concepts are being taught in the classroom that day, you're welcome to use any QR reader to find the lesson that's tied to that particular page. In addition to that, if your child is struggling with some homework, just a reminder, we would love for you to put a note on the homework and send it back in with them. That way we can work with them and reteach the lesson and find out where the gaps might be. Also, I would love to see the kids come and take some initiative on that. So definitely make sure you're communicating with them, put a note on the homework, encourage them to come see the teachers in the morning and say, I got stuck on something. It just kind of helps instill some of that adult behavior that we're trying to transition into them. And for our continued expectations, we are teaching the GoMath, as I mentioned. You've already noticed that the strategy is coming home. There are multiple strategies. teaching you fairly simple concepts. It's designed that way for a reason. We all calculate math differently, so we're giving them strategies that hopefully will stick with each different individual. I always like to say it's similar to doing a puzzle. Everyone might do a puzzle differently, but at the end, the picture should look like the picture on the box. So we kind of give them different tools, let them apply those as needed. Right now, we're focusing on the double-digit subtraction with regrouping. So there are some steps that led us to what we considered the old school math. We do expect if the test or homework is asking them to show a picture that they do follow those directions. But however, we also are looking for them to be able to independently be able to do those double-digit subtraction problems. The most important thing with the math coming up is to show their work. A lot of times they like to just guess at the answer. As we've explained to them, we need them to show work. It's going to be asked of them all the way through probably college. And that way we can see if they're making common mistakes, what that might be, so we can reinforce the correct way of doing that. The other thing that we're introducing is the time test. So right now we're starting with some addition and subtraction problems that are just with with the answers through 20. And then we will move on to some additional ones. They'll be mixed in addition and subtraction. So you'll start seeing those come home. They're working on just trying to recall those math facts quickly, in addition to test taking strategies. We're working on teaching them to skip over ones they don't know so they can come back and spend more time on those. It will just help, again, based on the standardized tests that they will start doing going forward. So we're just kind of instilling those test taking strategies along with making sure that they can recall their math facts quickly. Right now, they're doing about 20 problems, but eventually by the end of the semester, they're going to work up to around 100 problems that will be in a 5-minute period. So we're gradually building to that. And then we are continuing to take grades. That's just for our records, so we are able to see which children are doing well and which ones we need to continue to work with. But you might see some tests and quizzes and classwork coming home with that information. Again, it's not something that we talk about in class. It's really just for the teacher's work. We will continue to work on the 3-digit, I think this is actually coming up on the next slide, sorry. But the 3-digit addition and subtraction, we're also going to be working on money, time, measurement, and data's in there throughout daily lessons. So if you need additional resources, you should have your GoMath password to be able to log into your students' page. If you don't have that and would like it, again, reach out to your teacher. We can provide that information to you. And just continuously reinforcing really the basic math facts will help strengthen their knowledge going forward. And we've talked about the time test. So,
Want me to jump in here?
Yeah.
So this is Dr. Mack again, and Mrs. Lazowski just reminded you of that GoMath online resource. It's available to both you and your child. This is one of the reasons why a couple of years ago our math department felt GoMath was a good transition for us. And one of the things is this online resource that we feel is a really good support both to you and your child as they continue to progress through the math program. I wanted to highlight a couple of things in here just to remind you that I think these are good resources. When you log into the website, you're going to come up with the screen that's on the left. You're going to click on My Library, and that's going to transition you to the screenshot that's on the right. And what I recommend on the right to just start with, that I think are the best options, are the on-the-spot video tutorials. These are what I found to be most helpful for parents, particularly if you want to see how something was taught in class. Just because, as Ms. Lazowski said earlier, this is not the way we were taught math. So it seems cumbersome, or you don't understand it, or too complex, and you don't understand how it was approached in the classroom. Those really quick tutorials are great not only for you to see what was taught in class, but also if you feel like your child needs some reinforcement or repetition around that, your child can also watch those videos. The other thing that I'd also highlight to you is the Mega Math option that's on here. And that's where the concepts are put into a game format, which is a great way to reinforce those skills with the students. And I think the only other one that I'd probably point out here is the iTools Primary. You'll see it's this little star at the bottom. I actually love this, and sometimes I go into the program and just play with it, quite honestly. But that's where you can actually get online manipulatives that your child can actually physically move, like 10 blocks and things like that, to actually solve equations. And it's basically just taking those hands-on manipulatives and put them into an online format. And it's a great way for them to continue that reinforcement as well.
It's Miss Green again. Hello. I'll be talking about field trips and other dates coming up. The first important date to think about is February 12th, which will be here before we know it. It's the 1st and 2nd grade chorus concert. The show starts at 6:30, so if y'all could get your child here and you here at 6 o'clock, there'll be more information to come from Ms. KKG. But that's an exciting time for our students. And then the field trip that's coming up is on March 27th, which is the zoo field trip. And we're super excited about this because it goes directly in with our last novel study, the one and only Ivan, which is the sweetest story ever. And it's a really fun novel study to teach. And a character in the book ended up coming to the Atlanta Zoo. So we're super excited about being able to visit the zoo and especially the gorilla exhibit to talk more about that. But that's happening on March 27th. And then just stay tuned on our websites. We'll be giving you more information to come.
And one thing, sorry, Chris, I don't mean to jump in or somewhere, but around the grade chorus concert, that is required attendance for all students. It is a part of their music grade. So that's why we want to go ahead and give you the heads up. Liz will send an invite out as well to all parents regarding this concert with a little bit more detailed information. But I did want to make you aware that it is required and a part of every 1st and 2nd grader's music grade.
Parent-teacher conferences, those are also coming up, which is crazy because then it's, essentially summer. But the Sign Up Geniuses, the link will go live on February 3rd at 4 p.m. You can find them on the class webpage. So every teacher will be sending or putting a link probably in the announcement section. And then you'll just click on the link and then sign up for a time. If you know that you can't make it that day, because these are required, just send us an email and we'll schedule another conference through Dr. Mack's office. And remember that your child unfortunately cannot come that day unless you want to put him or her in the camp downstairs, but they can't just sit outside by themselves without a parent or someone watching them. So please remember that. But conference day is actually February 21st, which is a Friday, and that will be here right before you know it.
And I'm going to jump in and piggyback on what Ms. Green just said about no children are to be left unattended. That is for their safety because we can't have students actually unattended without an adult there. I know that as the 2nd grade teachers and I were actually rehearsing for this webinar, a couple of them said that they had some parents reach out and ask questions about that. You are able to drop your child into camp that morning for the time period of your conference. And I don't believe you get charged for that time. That really is just a service that the school is providing to you. If your child, however, is in camp longer than 30 to 45 minutes, then you will be charged because then it becomes that they've been there longer than what should be an appropriate time for your conference. If you feel like if the teachers are backed up and you think your conference is going to go longer, what I would suggest is while you're waiting outside, just run back downstairs and let Mr. Walker and Ms. Canty or whomever is sitting outside know that your child's teacher is running behind and it may be a little bit longer. That way they're aware that the time may be a little bit longer than 30 to 45 minutes for you to be in the conference. But we're hoping that this actually is helpful for you and also allows us to ensure that students are safe as well while they're on campus. All right, so that brings us to our part here where we have some questions, and I love it because somebody's already put a question in, and there comes 2. You guys keep rolling with the questions, okay? So what I will do at this portion of it is I will read the question out to everyone in the room here, And then either I or the teachers will answer the question. And Ms. Green just passed me a note. She had her own question as well. Love it that we have questions coming internally. But we're going to start with parent questions first. So first is from Ivan, and Ivan says, any suggested fun reading that is related to what they learn in social studies to help reinforce what they're learning in that class?
Yes, I will take that one.
Go.
Miss Crosby and Miss Stewart are great resources in our library to look for other books because they know what we're teaching. But there are so many fun historical fiction books that are age appropriate that help reinforce. I know this is Miss Green, sorry. But when we were doing our colony projects, there's a ton of books about young colonists during that time period where our students could relate. And so what I would suggest, the best and the easiest way to do that would be reaching out to our librarians directly. Otherwise, email your classroom teacher, and your classroom teacher can compile a list for you and send it your way, or lead your child in the right direction and take them to the library. But that was a great question.
Blair, Catherine, anything else to add to that? Sumner got it.
Sumner got it?
Yeah,
Way to
that
go,
sounds
Sumner. Okay. All right, Austin asked, how much time do the students typically have to complete writing assignments in class so we can align with similar time for homework assignments to check themselves?
So I can address that. Every writing lesson is different depending on what we're focusing on in the class. For instance, creative writing may be a little quicker than pulling expository text, pulling information out. So we typically do a longer writing assignment where we're trying to, again, ensure that their spelling rules are being applied, the capital punctuation, all of the grammar pieces are there, and we're working on extending the writing so they have the endurance. But at the same time, we're trying to also teach them not to be too wordy for the sake of putting stuff on paper. So it's a balancing act. We're trying to teach them the importance of the words they're using. Again, we're working at all times on synonyms and antonyms and prefixes. So it will contain all the stuff that we've been learning throughout the year. So our writing assignments, unfortunately, don't have an actual amount of time that we specifically allocate. It just depends on what the assignment is for that particular week and what goals we're trying to achieve and where that student is. But in terms of looking for stuff at home, most of our writing assignments for the long writing assignments are done in the class. For what they're doing at home, I would just, if you're looking over it, double check that they are applying their rules that we've talked about in terms of grammar, capitalization, spelling rules, making sure that they're handwriting. That's another piece. Some kids are taking a little longer to get neat print on paper versus just writing something. So we're teaching them to slow down so that it's nice and legible. So those are the components that kind of go into our writing assignments in the class. I don't know if that specifically answered your question.
I might piggyback on Mrs. Lazowski in answering that question. Homework that's sent home across the board, it should be reinforcement with what was taught that day. So really, I think that homework shouldn't take more than about 20 to 30 minutes. And if it does, then please reach out to us because I know that y'all have busy schedules outside of school. So that would be a good time to, allocate 20 to 30 minutes, making sure that, of course, your child is meeting our new heightened expectations.
I would also, this is Mrs. Veal, just like to add, if you are trying to encourage your children to check over their own work and make sure that they're turning in their best work and kind of meeting our expectations, one thing that we have introduced at school is kind of like little checklists. So having one of those at home, and you can reach out to any of us, and of course we can provide it, but physically checking off when they're done, is this neat? Do I have punctuation? Do I have spaces where I need spaces? All of the things that we're expecting from their work at school, you can go ahead and have them check that off and just reinforce editing their own work. But yeah, let us know if you need any of that.
Awesome. Now at the Echo, just a reminder that our homework estimate by grade level is 10 minutes for each grade level. So for example, first grade, we're about 10 to 15 minutes on homework a night. Second grade, 20 to 25, maybe 30, depending on the extent that they're having to work. third grade 30 to 40, fourth grade 40 to 50, fifth grade 50 to an hour and 20 minutes. So we're really slowly building up that stamina to do continued work at home as they continue to develop and mature as well. Okay. Question from Ivan, and I'll actually take this one, guys. Could you please touch on what they will learn in foreign language and science this semester? Ivan, we're doing the core academics in this curriculum webinar. What I would recommend is to make sure you go look at those foreign language and science web pages and reach out directly to those teachers. We really focus on those core academics in the curriculum webinar rather than the co-curriculars. So great question. Reach out directly to those teachers and they can walk you through what they're going to be covering this semester. And then the one thing that Ms. Green passed to me, she passed a note to me, was a question about just reminders around parent communication. So wanted to just touch base, and I know I've talked about this in parent council, and that just reminding everybody that we do have a 24-hour policy in return to emails or phone mails, or even notes if they come in on old-fashioned paper, which I have yet, it's been a while since I've seen an old-fashioned note come to me from a parent or a child. So just want to remind you guys, if there's a delay in a teacher responding to you, it's because we do have that 24-hour turnaround. Now I know our teachers tend to respond well within that 24-hour, and I really try to respond also more timely. But just know if there is a delay, that is our policy here at St. Martin's, particularly if you send a communication late in the evening. Please don't expect that the teacher's checking their email at night. My expectation, I'll be honest with you, is that as soon as they leave here, they now are at home with their families. And because it's very important to me and to us as a culture in our school that our teachers also have that time to be with their families and have that work-life balance. So the other thing that I'd also share with you is that I do not expect the teachers to necessarily be checking email throughout the day. They should be actively engaged with their students during the day or planning lessons or grading. So if you do send an email during the day, if it's something that your child needs to get a message, like their carpool or their dismissal plans have changed, I highly recommend that you email the teacher, but you also copy the front desk on that, because the front desk, there's always somebody there monitoring that email, and they can make sure that they can either call into your child's teacher's classroom and make them aware of the change, or they can go down and physically talk to them. But I don't want you guys to think that they could are necessarily reading emails all throughout the day, because our expectation is that they're teaching throughout the day and preparing for those lessons. And so I see that Mr. Nama has already put in the receptionist email address. That actually came up yesterday too. Thank you, Mr. Nama. And the only other thing I wanted to let you guys know, we've talked a lot about independence on the part of your children, and we're really trying to develop those work habits and skills as well. We really, really, really want you guys to allow your children to walk in by themselves to school and unpack and get themselves settled. That's another next level of independence, of ownership and taking care of themselves. So I actually shared this in the first grade webinar yesterday as well, because I know that's something that parents also need to transition sometimes with, but it is such in the best interest of your child if you walk them even just to the main entrance of the door and just let them walk the rest of the way. It's such a great thing for them, and it gives them confidence that they can do things on their own in a very appropriate way. So Mr. Nam, I think you answered that one about the front desk. Okay. You guys have anything else you'd like to add before we conclude the webinar? So I know some of you may have some questions once we actually end the webinar. Please don't hesitate to reach out to any of us. We're happy to continue to engage in these conversations, as well as answer any questions about anything that's been shared or that is coming up this semester. And we thank you again for joining us this morning. Would love feedback on the format. I brought it up in parent council this morning. It sounded like this is a good format for a lot of parents. But we're always open to suggestions and recommendations. So thank you for joining us. Once we have the recording and the link that's up on YouTube, I'll push those out. Be on the lookout for that sometime, maybe next Monday or Tuesday. We want to make sure we give Mr. Nama time to get these uploaded and the links sent to me. So you guys have a great Thursday, and thank you to the second grade team and Mr. Nama for making this happen.